The story of Mephibosheth. Who was Mephibosheth in the Bible? Discover the story of Mephibosheth, the man with numerous limiting factors. He became physically disabled in childhood, faced prejudice and discrimination from society, later experienced betrayal and injustice, and also endured the painful loss of all his possessions. This cruel twist of fate tested his resilience even further, pushing him to confront despair and uncertainty. However, despite these great challenges, Mephibosheth's story is one of resilience and triumph. He navigated the turbulent seas of adversity, displaying unwavering strength in the face of unimaginable trials. Let's uncover the true story of Mephibosheth according to the Bible. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, take this opportunity to subscribe now. Also, make sure to enable all notifications, leave your like, and let's begin the video. We will emphasize the story of Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan and grandson of Saul. Indeed, Mephibosheth was a descendant of David's best friend. There is another significant detail about his family. He was the nephew of another man also called Mephibosheth. Therefore, it is crucial to avoid confusion. Mephibosheth, the son of Saul and his concubine Rizpah, had a brother named Merib-Baal. This particular Mephibosheth was among the descendants of Saul who were handed over by David to the Gibeonites for execution. It was a touching story in which Rizpah camped beside her deceased children for months to protect them from the dishonor of being devoured by animals. Remarkably, Mephibosheth, the focal point of this video, was spared from death during the same event. He was spared due to David's loyalty to Jonathan. Scholars have not reached a definitive conclusion about the exact meaning of the name Mephibosheth. In fact, there is a discussion about the original spelling of the name Mephibosheth because a slight difference in the word significantly alters its meaning. We know that the name Mephibosheth also appears in the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Old Testament, as Merib-Baal or Mephiboshet, except in 2 Samuel 21 verse 8. Due to this difficulty, the name Mephibosheth originally may have the sense of Baal is advocate, hero of Baal, Baal contends, or even the one who fights with Baal, or the one who shatters Baal, as mentioned in the book of 1 Chronicles 8 verse 34 and 9:40. Furthermore, the transition of the name was further modified, where the substitution of Baal with Boshet, meaning shame, took place. An example of this can be seen in the Septuagint, where in the text of 1 Kings 18 verse 19 and 25, it says, prophets of shame, instead of prophets of Baal. When Saul and Jonathan were killed in Jezreel, Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son, was only 5 years old. Upon receiving the news of Saul and Jonathan's death, the woman who was taking care of Mephibosheth took him and fled. However, in her haste, she accidentally dropped him, leaving him crippled, as stated in 2 Samuel 4 verse 4. After this incident, Mephibosheth was taken to Lodabar, a place in Gilead. Lodabar was located east of the Jordan River, as mentioned in 2 Samuel 2 verse 29 and 17:27. Many scholars believe that Lodabar is probably the same place known as Debir. The prophet Amos sarcastically plays with words by using the expression, "You who rejoice over the conquest of Lodabar," as this name literally means nothing or forgetfulness. In Lodabar, Machir, son of Ammiel, took care of Mephibosheth, as mentioned in 2 Samuel 9 verse 4. Later on, Mephibosheth also had a son named Micah, according to 2 Samuel 9 verse 12. The story of Mephibosheth truly gains prominence when David, already established as the king of Israel, remembered his friendship with Jonathan and the covenant they had made about 20 years earlier. He inquired if there was still anyone from the house of Saul to whom he could show kindness in honor of that friendship and the covenant with Jonathan. At this point, David displayed behavior contrary to the practices of the time. Instead of trying to eliminate a descendant of the previous dynasty, he intended to honor and show mercy to this descendant. It was on this occasion that Ziba, an old servant from the house of Saul, informed King David about the existence of Mephibosheth, a young crippled man who had been living as a fugitive in Lodabar for at least 15 years. Many interpreters see Ziba's response to King David as a form of prejudice, as it seems to emphasize Mephibosheth's disabled condition. Perhaps Ziba was trying to indicate to David that this young man was someone who was worthless by the standards of that time. However, David disregarded it and immediately ordered that Mephibosheth be brought to him. David's attitude towards Mephibosheth can be seen as a representation of God's grace that reaches sinners. God acts with mercy and kindness towards those who are considered unqualified, those who deserve nothing. God rescues people who deserve judgment and death, giving them a new life in his presence. Afterwards, David received Mephibosheth with honor, granted him the properties of Saul, and allowed him to dine daily at the king's table. In the book of 2 Samuel, chapters 16 and 19, we also have an account of Ziba's betrayal during Absalom's rebellion. During that time, David fled from Absalom, and Ziba came to meet him, bringing the necessary provisions. However, Ziba falsely accused Mephibosheth of coveting the kingdom. Initially, David believed Ziba's lie and gave him everything that belonged to Mephibosheth. However, when David returned after the death of Absalom, Mephibosheth came to meet him to defend himself and prove his innocence. In David's presence, Mephibosheth was questioned about the incident and had the opportunity to reveal Ziba's betrayal. He recounted how he asked Ziba to saddle a donkey for him to travel, but Ziba left him behind and devised a plan to accuse him of treason. During the period when David needed to flee from Absalom, Mephibosheth deeply mourned for him, following the customs of the time. He did not wash his feet, did not wash his clothes, nor did he trim his beard. This was a clear demonstration of loyalty to King David, showing that he never aligned himself with Absalom's plan. After hearing Mephibosheth's version of the story, David believed him. However, he proposed that the inherited possessions be divided between Mephibosheth and Ziba. Surprisingly, Mephibosheth gave up everything, allowing Ziba to keep all the property, and demonstrated that his concern was solely focused on David's well-being according to 2 Samuel chapter 19, verse 30. In the dialogue with David in chapter 19 of the book of 2 Samuel, we can perceive the kind of character that Mephibosheth possessed. He responded, "My lord the king, your servant is crippled. I had my donkey saddled so that I could ride on it and go with the king, but my servant deceived me. He has slandered me to my lord the king. Yet my lord the king is like an angel of God, so do whatever pleases you. All the descendants of my grandfather deserved nothing but death from my lord the king, but you gave your servant a place among those who eat at your table. So what right do I have to make any more appeals to the king? According to the book of 2 Samuel, between verses 26 and 28. The accounts of Mephibosheth end with the episode mentioned earlier in the topic about the other character with the same name, where David saved him from being killed along with 7 members of Saul's family, including the other Mephibosheth, who were handed over to the Gibeonites in 2 Samuel chapter 19, verse 24. Although the story of Mephibosheth is often used in sermons and songs, preachers and songwriters rarely remember this part of the story described in chapters 16 and, especially, its outcome in chapter 19. Unfortunately, people only remember Mephibosheth in prosperity sermons. It is easy to preach about the physically disabled person who was taken from a place of obscurity to receive a royal inheritance and have a privileged position at the king's table. What seems challenging is to preach about the same disabled person who, now betrayed by his servant, despite being innocent, was forced to share his inheritance with the treacherous servant. Even more challenging is to preach about his act of giving up all his material possessions, not caring that his enemy would keep everything that belonged to him. Truly, the story of Mephibosheth provides us with a powerful sermon, not about prosperity, but about the character of a man who, despite tragedies and difficulties, remained faithful to his principles. Now, let me know if you are already familiar with the story of Mephibosheth in the Bible, and I will also leave a video for you to watch about the story of King Solomon.